Keeping the young, talented core together so far after the 2024 season, Brown will become an unrestricted free agent and will be eligible for a super max deal. He discussed his future with the Celtics, telling the Ringer, quote, "I don't know. As long as I'm needed, it's not up to me. We'll see how they feel about me over time, and I feel about them over time. Hopefully, whatever it is, it makes sense, but I will stay where I'm wanted. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correct. I just enjoy the time that you have now. If it's your whole career, it's your whole career. If it's not, it's not. Some of the greatest players of all time haven't finished with their organization. Michael Jordan retired a Wizard." JJ?
Yes.
Which team is best set up for the next 5 years?
I want to start by just saying I don't think there's much to read into Jaylen Brown's comments. I think this is a normal response to a question about his upcoming free agency. And he's right. If he's wanted, if he feels needed, if the Celtics give him the bag, I would expect him to re-sign with the Celtics. Boston is one of the teams that is set up really well. Assuming Jaylen Brown is around over the next 5 years, this is a team that's set up really well. They have one of the most dynamic duos in the NBA, two great two-way wings that can create their own shot, tons of shooting on the roster. I think there's two teams that really stand out to me. Number one is Oklahoma City. And it's interesting because at the beginning of the year, ESPN did their power rankings, their future power rankings over the next 5 years. Oklahoma City was 23rd. But what has happened this year? Shea took another jump. Josh Giddey has improved. Jalen Williams looks like a future star and is making a late push for Rookie of the Year. And I think when you talk about the future of teams, which teams over the next 5 years, you don't just look at the players. You look at the front office, you look at ownership, and you look at the coaching staff. And for me, Oklahoma City has a great coach, a great front office. You have to factor that in. The other team, I might have had this team won, to be honest with you, a couple months ago. But the other team for me is the Memphis Grizzlies. They already have an all-NBA guard in Ja Morant. They have one of the greatest shooters in the NBA right now who also plays good defense in Desmond Bane. They have a unicorn in Jaren Jackson Jr., a guy that can guard multiple positions, defend the rim, and make threes. Taylor Jenkins is one of the best coaches in the NBA. And Zach Kleiman, one of the most underrated GMs. They also have their draft capital going forward. Those two teams to me seem like, and look, we can talk about Jokic in Denver and Boston and Cleveland's young core, but those two teams seem like the two best positioned teams over the next 5 years.
Well, I don't disagree with you on much. Let me first say, piggybacking off, I'll start off my comments with about Jaylen Brown just the way that you did, from the standpoint that I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I would say keep my eyes on it because remember there was noise that the Brooklyn Nets were potentially interested in him and that Boston may have been interested in moving him to get Kevin Durant. We don't know if there's any residue of animosity or anything stemming from that. We've also heard that Jason Tatum, clearly the number one guy, the star of the team, even though Jaylen Brown is right there. We've heard noise about as to whether or not that's something that Jaylen Brown will want to continue to be a part of in the future. I have no idea whether that's true or not, but it is stuff that has been said in NBA circles, and sometimes that leads to movement taking place. So we got to keep our eyes on that, and we can't rule out. It might not be a big deal at all, or may very well end up being a bigger deal than we all suspected. That's all I have to say about that. As it pertains to over the next 5 years, Oklahoma City is definitely in the mix. Remember, they don't even have Chet Holmgren on the court yet. He got injured. He'll be back. Then you look at
I should have
Shai
mentioned
Gilgeous
him. That's an
Alexander.
oversight on my part. That's an oversight on my part. Thank you, Stephen A. You saved me there. No, you saved me there. Thank you.
No one's perfect. You're all right. It's okay. All right, so we got Oklahoma City. We got that going on. I'm definitely going to agree with you about Boston. I'm definitely going to agree with you about Memphis. But I'm not throwing Denver out of the mix. Jokic is only 27. Jamal Murray is only 25. Aaron Gordon is 27 years of age. When you look at their squad, Michael Porter Jr. is 24 years of age. Mike Malone is one hell of a coach. Organizationally, we've seen what they've done. They're a pretty damn good organization as well. And so you take all of those things into consideration, and you're led by the reigning two-time league MVP, who isn't even scratching 30 years of age yet, and he's one of the elders on the squad. I definitely believe that Denver has to be in the mix as it pertains to one of those teams to look at over the next 5 years.
Hey.
They've got to be thrown in there.
And I agree with you on that. And I think you could make an argument that Denver probably is as well positioned as any team. They could be the most well positioned team over the next 5 years. I totally agree with you, Stephen A.
JJ, I haven't been paying attention. How's Duke doing in the tourney?
Wow. Why? I don't understand. I came on the show today. I handed out compliments to Stephen A. I handed out 3 compliments to Mad Dog.
This one, 132 to 109. Now, before the game, Jaylen Brown did an interview with The Ringer where he had some comments about his future there in Boston. Take a look. He said, quote, "I don't know. As long as I'm needed, it's not up to me. We'll see how they feel about me over time and how I feel about them over time. Hopefully, whatever it is, it makes sense. But I will stay where I'm wanted. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correct," end quote. Okay, so with that, I got Tim Legler here with me. We got Woj back in here. I guess, Woj, what are you hearing? Is this window for the Celtics now closing when we talk about this great pairing of Tatum and Brown?
First of all, I think every window in the NBA is limited, whether players are under contract or going to become a free agent, because having a player signed to an extension doesn't mean you're going to have him, because the day a player asks out, he's typically going to get a trade. Listen, I don't think Jaylen Brown was happy that he was involved in trade discussions with the Nets last summer with Kevin Durant. But I think Boston knows, I think with Jaylen Brown, with Jason Tatum, you have to treat every year as though this is your best chance to win one, and then win another, because as talented as Boston is, probably the deepest roster in the league, this is a year-to-year proposition in the NBA. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He could do an extension next summer. Again, with a new collective bargaining agreement and the ability to do a richer percentage of your contract as an extension, he could get more money than might be available right now under the CBA. But I think for Boston, they understand the urgency of winning now. And I think with Jaylen Brown, listen, he is a thoughtful individual. And not every player is going to give up his leverage when he talks publicly about it. I didn't think the comment was that incendiary. I thought it was, he left it open-ended.
Well, I thought the interesting thing, Legs, was that he not only said that, but he also said that, look, he was concerned when he heard about his name being bandied about in the Kevin Durant. So much so that he said he got on a 3-way with Stevens and Jason Tatum. And he said, I had to ask Stevens personally, are you trying to trade me and Jason Tatum? I heard you've been working out with KD. Or have you been pushing for this? When you hear a player make these kind of statements, what do you take from it?
And something else he said, which was kind of funny to me, he said, I'm from the South. And when you come in your house in the South, you come in the front door. You don't operate in the back door. Basically what he was saying was all the behind-the-scenes talk about possibly being traded, and no one was coming to him and talking to him directly. So he was putting his message out there. I agree with Woj. I don't think what he said was all that bad. Really what he's doing is being realistic about the nature of the NBA. The Celtics are going to take care of their business interest, and that's all he's saying. So he's prepared for anything, and I thought the comments were actually kind of refreshing because he was open and honest. As far as, is there window closing? Possibly with these two guys, but here's the thing. He's an asset one way or another. So if Jaylen Brown isn't in a Celtics uniform, he's not walking out the door without compensation. Right? He'll be moved, and they're going to get back incredibly valuable assets, and they have a top 5 player in the NBA on their roster. So that window isn't closing in terms of the Celtics competing for a title. We'll see what happens going forward with these two guys. But, man, were they impressive last night. That was one of their best performances of the last 2 months and the worst home loss for the Kings all year.
You're right.
Celtics were totally locked in last night, and that's when they look like a team that could win it all.
People have been sleeping on the Kings. Kings are playing really well out in the West. Look, and the Celtics are certainly feared there in the East. But speaking of fear, how about LeBron James' former teammate Mario Chalmers had some harsh words to say about players fearing the King. I want you guys to take a listen to this.
Nobody fears Bron. Nobody's like, damn, I gotta go play this Bron tonight. Nobody said that. I don't know why.
Right.
Because I've seen people be scared when they actually line up to him, but they're not scared thinking about that matchup.
Right.
You hear anybody from that era talk about going against Jordan, there's a fear.
Right.
So when you have people that fear a player, then that's telling you something different already. Like, Jordan's just that guy.
All right. Former teammate LeBron, what do you take from the comment?
Yeah, well, look, I played in that decade of 1990 to 2000. I believe a guy won 6 rings during that time. So I played against Jordan a little bit. The one thing I had a problem with is the word fear. You know, I didn't fear Michael Jordan. I don't know that anybody that did